During the Second World War, as Allied nations united to crush the Axis powers, one prominent Indian freedom fighter deliberately aligned with them. His name was Subhash Chandra Bose. Today, he is revered across India as a national hero, an uncompromising patriot who struck a literal pact with fascist regimes to secure his country's liberation. It forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. Can the absolute nobility of fighting for your nation's freedom ever justify an alliance with the most brutal dictatorships in modern history? In the 1930s, the Indian independence movement was defined almost entirely by Mahatma Gandhi and his strict, unwavering commitment to nonviolent civil disobedience. Bose, however, saw things differently. He argued that the British Empire would never surrender its crown jewel through peaceful protests alone. Instead, it would require armed, violent expulsion. Yet, despite these vast ideological differences, the two men initially worked side by side at the very top of the Indian National Congress. That fragile partnership eventually broke. Bose's radical calls for armed uprising alienated the moderate leadership. He was ousted from his position as Congress president, and the British, seeing an opportunity to silence a dangerous militant, placed him under strict house arrest in Calcutta. Across the entire subcontinent, millions of young Indians were desperate to take the fight directly to the British, but their most aggressive, charismatic leader was trapped inside his own home, surrounded by imperial surveillance. In January 1941, Bose made his move. Under the cover of darkness, he slipped past British guards, disguised as a deaf and bearded Pashtun insurance agent named Zia-Uddin. He embarked on a grueling overland journey. He crossed the rugged terrain of Afghanistan to reach Kabul, then traveled north into the Soviet Union, eventually making his way to Moscow. Finally, he boarded a special courier aircraft and flew straight into Berlin. Bose chose his destination with cold geopolitical precision. He was applying a singular logic. The enemy of his enemy was his friend. Once in Nazi Germany, Bose negotiated directly with high-ranking officials to establish the Free India Center. With German funding, he began recruiting captured Indian soldiers who originally fought in North Africa, offering them a chance at freedom. Thousands of captured soldiers were organized into the Free India Legion. They swore oaths to Bose, donned Axis uniforms, and integrated into the German military. But the alliance quickly hollowed out. By the spring of 1942, Hitler's armies were bogged down in the massive frozen landscapes of the Soviet Union. The Nazi leadership viewed the Free India Legion as a mere propaganda tool, dismissing Bose's persistent requests to plan a land invasion of India. Realizing that a weakened Germany had no capacity to project power into South Asia, Bose knew he had to pivot. If he wanted an army capable of marching on Delhi, he had to abandon Europe and find a new military patron closer to home. In February 1943, Bose boarded a German U-boat for a highly dangerous, exceptionally rare naval maneuver. He traveled around the Cape of Good Hope and deep into the Indian Ocean, where he physically transferred at sea to a waiting Japanese submarine. Disembarking in Japanese-held territory, Bose immediately began negotiations with the upper echelons of the Japanese imperial leadership, including Prime Minister Hideki Tojo. With Japanese backing and his own undeniable charisma, Bose rallied the expatriate Indian populations across Southeast Asia. He rapidly expanded the Indian National Army, or INA, transforming captured British Indian soldiers and civilian volunteers into a massive fighting force. Bose now had the troops and the proximity he needed for his ultimate military gamble, Operation Yugo. This was a massive joint ground invasion by the INA and the Japanese army, pushing straight into mainland India, designed to break the British lines and trigger a massive civilian uprising across the subcontinent. The invasion ultimately collapsed. During the brutal battles of Imphal and Kohima in 1944, the advancing forces ran into exhausted supply lines, punishing monsoon rains, and a devastatingly effective counterattack by Commonwealth troops. The human cost was catastrophic. Thousands of Indian National Army soldiers, who had genuinely believed they were marching to liberate their homeland, died of starvation, disease, and heavy artillery fire on the dense jungle hillsides. In August 1945, just days after Japan surrendered, Bose reportedly died from severe third-degree burns when his overloaded plane crashed during takeoff in Taiwan. Because he died in transit, far from the battlefield and just as the war ended, Bose was entirely insulated from the political fallout of his military defeat. In the eyes of the Indian public, he instantly transcended into an untouchable martyr. The British Raj attempted to make an example of the surviving INA officers by putting them on trial for treason at the historic Red Fort, but the plan backfired. Public trials sparked nationwide outrage, turning the defeated soldiers into national heroes. Inspired by Bose's defiance, widespread mutinies erupted within the British Indian Armed Forces. Recognizing that the loyalty of their own military apparatus was permanently fractured, the British were forced to rapidly accelerate their exit from the subcontinent. Yet his legacy remains deeply complex. To assemble the leverage required to challenge the British Empire, Bose willingly turned a blind eye to the Holocaust and ignored the severe atrocities committed by the Japanese Imperial Army, aligning his nation's fate with genocidal regimes. We often want to view fights for national liberation as stories of pure moral clarity, but history is rarely that clean. Subhash Chandra Bose proved that sometimes the struggle for freedom is fought in the darkest, most uncomfortable gray zones of extreme pragmatism.